Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to Earn More, Negotiate Your Salary Like a Pro. I have a little assistant here with me today. I don't know if you can see her. We got Phoebe Cat next to me. She had taken my chair. So, of course, I had to go and get another chair. I also have my cup of coffee because it's 8 in the morning, my time. Cheers to wherever you are watching this live or maybe watching the recording after the fact. I am Claire Wasserman. In short, I empower women to own their worth and expand their wealth. And I would love for you to join my community. It's free at ladiesgetpaid.com. But this is not so much about me. This is about you. So, quick question for you all. When you think of negotiating your salary, what comes to mind? I actually think a better question would be, how does it make you feel? Okay, so I'll take a beat right there. If this emoji resonates with you, trust me, you are not alone. That had been very much me before starting Ladies Get Paid. My joke is that I began my organization because I needed it. Okay. I also was very angry about the wage gap. So let me give you a little bit of background on Ladies Get Paid and how I started this whole thing, because once you know it, it will all make sense for why I'm so passionate about salary negotiation and also why you should be so excited to do it. It's actually a really good opportunity to look fantastic. I first learned about the wage and leadership gap in around 2016 and just felt sick to my stomach because, as an individual, right, what can you possibly do to combat something? Well, there's my cat. Something so systemic and overwhelming, right? Are we going to go viral with Phoebe? You can't combat something alone, but you can maybe change your own statistic, right? You can negotiate your salary as a way of at least closing your own wage gap, right? Because we can't just sit around waiting for policies to change. So for me, game changing, my ability to stand up for myself, it started when my fire to change the status quo around women grew larger than my fear around rocking the boat or potentially rocking the boat, which is what salary negotiation could do. But if you do it right, it won't. I started to go around the country hosting town halls for women to talk about money and salary negotiation. And I just realized there are so many more universals, things that we have in common than we have different. And you know what we have in common? Again, that fire to be paid what we're worth, to be respected. And a way of being respected is translated through your paycheck. But there were also a lot of questions around, well, how do I negotiate in a way that doesn't feel like I'm being greedy or wanting to make me vomit? Okay. Like, is it a necessary evil that I just have to just barrel through? Or is there a way that I can do it that feels more authentic to me? Right. And I started a Slack group, and a little bit of background here. 55,000 women have passed through this Slack group, and they've exchanged more than 3 million messages. So everything that I teach you today has really come from what I've witnessed in the community. And also, I got my master's certificate in behavioral finance and financial psychology because it was just so clear to me, both in my life and what I was seeing in the community, that information by itself is not enough to make change. Okay. It's really at the end of the day how you feel about the information that will be whether or not you take action. And I've been able to teach at places like Harvard Business School. So my joke here is, I can teach at places that I would never get into. And seriously, these places are asking me to come in and teach their employees or their students how to negotiate. And I always warn them, listen, the return on your investment with me is that now everyone's going to ask you for a raise. But I think what you'll see in my presentation today is that it's not about more for you and less for them. This is win-win for everybody. All right. And the way that I'm going to present today, it's a little bit different. I want to present it kind of through the filter of assumptions that I have seen women in my community make. I've also made some of them myself. These are assumptions around salary negotiation that have held us back. So I want to really flip the script a little bit, although you'll see it's not just about mindset. It's also about, well, what do you actually say? So I'll give you a few scripts as well. And it'll take you kind of through the whole process from beginning to end of preparing and actually executing on a salary negotiation, whether it's at a current job or for a new job. And I'm going to try to move this cat. Okay, there we go. Sorry, Phoebes. So just as I go through today's presentation, something to keep in mind for yourself is just, what are you motivated by? Very tangibly. So maybe it's not the wage gap for you. Maybe it's like you just want to buy a nice car finally, right? Or student loans, or we got to pay for our kids. I just had twins, right? We got to pay for them. I find that when you negotiate on behalf of somebody else or on behalf of your fire, you may have a more easeful time in negotiating. Note, I did not say easy. None of this is necessarily easy, but it just shouldn't feel, again, like I'd said before, kind of like this necessary evil. Want to see if we can maybe embrace this process. All right, baby cat, we're going to move you. All right. And keep this in mind. If this can be your fire, go for it. All right. So the first assumption here I see a lot of us make is we assume it's non-negotiable. Okay. Also, sometimes it's not, so much an assumption as it is they've literally told you in the job listing or during the interview process, it's not negotiable. Okay. So I want us to remember here, they expect you to negotiate. Even when they say it's non negotiable, it's still an expected part of the process of getting a job. And also, they're probably prepared to give you between 5 to 15% over the initial offer. Okay. By the way, if you have worked there, right, this is a salary negotiation for a current job that you have, and your responsibilities have changed more than 20%, you absolutely have a strong case for going in for a negotiation. You've essentially jumped what's called a pay band. So please keep track of everything that you're doing and compare it to your original job description. Hold on to that. So if you haven't done that at your current job, go do that for your next job. But if they've told you that it's non-negotiable, what do you do? What do you say? First, you got to ask yourself this question. Is it at the highest end of the market rate, which means you need to do research? And I'll get into how to do creative research in another slide. So let's say, yes, what they are offering is absolutely at the highest end of the research that you did. Okay, fine. We're not going to necessarily negotiate on price point, but I'd love for you to negotiate benefits other than money. I think that's something we're going to talk about later today, too. It's called full compensation. Now, let's say what they're offering you is not at the very highest end of the market rate. So, what you're going to do is you're going to say, I was looking for something closer to, state the number, and then you're going to go right into why you are a good investment for them. Okay. Like when I say bring research and receipts, research is here's where I did my research and why I'm asking for the higher number. Effectively, you're a top performer. So, why wouldn't you ask for top dollar? So here are two scripts for you. By the way, feel free to take screenshots of my presentation. And if you would actually like my presentation, please LinkedIn me. I'm going to give you my contact information at the end of the webinar today and reach out. I'll send you a link to my presentation. But in the meantime, go ahead, take screenshots. Also really encourage you, if you find something valuable, chances are someone else will find it valuable. And a great way to engage people on your LinkedIn is to post things that you learn. So if there's a screenshot that you want to share, tag me, I'll comment, and I'll bump your reach. Okay. So we'll, win-win-win for everybody here. Okay. So here are two things that you could say, back. And by the way, something you'll notice here is you're not just simply making it so open-ended, you're actually coming with suggestions. So it's not what benefits can you give me, but I got some suggestions for the benefits that I would like a signing bonus. And by the way, they absolutely can do this. I've seen many clients I've worked with who were not able to negotiate a higher base, but when they asked for a signing bonus or increased commission, they got it. By the way, really watch if you are asking questions that will elicit a yes or no answer. We don't want to do that. Why? Because the conversation will be over very quickly. Gives them an easy out. So don't ask if something's negotiable. Assume that it is and come with suggestions for what you're looking for. By the way, I'm seeing some good questions coming in. And let me take a quick look at that. I also am going to continue on. We have a shorter session today than normally I teach this. It's at least 75 minutes. I also have a 5.5 hour video course. So I'm going to address questions at the end. So please do stick around and keep asking them. But I want to acknowledge that I see them. Okay. Negotiating is a win-lose situation. This is another assumption I see. This is why I think a lot of us dread going into it, because if it's a win-lose situation, we're afraid that we're going to be the loser. No, in my mind, I think it can be a win-win experience. No matter if they say yes to you, you can still use this as an opportunity to demonstrate that you have value. And you can tell them about yourself. There are details you're going to share about your work that they may not necessarily know. Okay. But first, really think of them as a collaborator and a guide. So instead of this like tennis match where you're against each other, you're really on the same side. I mean, they've already told you effectively they want you, whether you've worked there long enough to be in the position to negotiate, they've invested in you. It would be to their detriment for you to walk away. Same thing goes for if you've gotten this far along in the interview process that they're even giving you an offer. They will lose money if you walk away. Seriously, losing money, losing time. Okay. So let's think of them as somebody who is rooting for you, not rooting against you. Think of them as somebody who can help you get more money. Why? Because they also want more money for themselves, assuming that they're not the owner of the company, right? You're both employees. They're higher up than you or in a different position than you. So the power feels different in that sense, but you both are technically employees of this company. See if, you can get them to help you by asking them stuff about, if you were in my position, what would you do? Kind of thing. And so, or even not just asking, what can you do for me, right? You meaning personal. How about, what can the company do for me? Okay. So that's depersonalizing it and really go into it, not just with your case, but good questions to ask. Because the more information you can get from them about how they even determined your salary is going to now allow you to make a better, more specific case for yourself. It also makes it so that it's not just about the number, yes or no, and then it's over quickly. It's really more about, how does somebody grow at this company, and compensation being just one aspect of it. Also, make sure that you're on the same page. Job, as I mentioned before, the pay band that you are in, right? How they calculate your compensation, it should be entirely based off of your job responsibilities, but also, context. So this is when it is very important to just ensure that you both completely are on the same page in regards to what you're actually doing for the company. So here are two things that you can say, right? This is the data I found in my research. Can you tell me if I'm thinking about my job in the right way? Have I leveled my job correctly? So that's a way of not necessarily coming out and asserting yourself, I want this amount, take it or leave it, which feels, uncomfortable for many of us. But instead, it's saying, just, this is where I'm coming from. What are your thoughts? Right? Do you see how that now kind of shifts the burden of it being so personal? Yeah. Also, knowing what they're up against. So, how did you determine the compensation? Why, I see that you didn't give raises this year or whatever, being empathetic, starting from a place where they're not going to get defensive about their salary. Uh, and coming with creativity here. I mean, I mentioned this before with the signing bonus, but I think that anyone who can be a creative problem solver, you can be a negotiator. And also knowing what they're prioritizing in terms of business. So this is not even about money. It's just about, where are they investing in the business? Okay. So where are areas in which they're putting in, whether they're staffing up or they're putting more budget behind it, or just shifting focus, right? If they believe these are areas of the business that will then make money for them, is there a way that you can align your work with that, right? You're going to make more money that way. Because sometimes there is a ceiling with how much you can make, simply because the kind of work you're doing is not directly tied to the business bottom line. So, really making sure, so this goes well beyond salary negotiation. This is actually about work, doing that high impact, high value work, okay, throughout the year, so that your case for the money can be strengthened. And also pay attention to body language here. And this includes Zoom, by the way. In language. Okay. There's this thing called the double bind. You may have heard of it, right? It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's where, when we assert ourselves, we can be perceived as aggressive. And when I say we, I'm talking about women, and particularly women of color. This is because the way we're socialized, it's to be, quite frankly, accommodating and nice. There's obviously nuances to this. I don't mean to make such a generalization, but listen, there's research that backs me up here. So, the very act of asking for more, does that push up against how we are socialized, right? Again, to be accommodating. I want to validate the fact that if you are nervous to negotiate because you might be looked at as greedy or rocking the boat, listen, you may have even had that experience before. You're not wrong. There is a chance that that could happen. And I hate to say it. This is why I will never be the person to go, just, go out there and demand what you're worth. Like, to us, between us, yes, of course, I want you to do that. But we are dealing with, unfortunately, some toxic workplaces here, and also how people are socialized subconsciously. So, how do we balance this? I like to think of it a little bit like that cliche of, you may have heard of it, where Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did, but backwards in heels. It's a little bit like salary negotiation. How do we assert ourselves, but without appearing aggressive? This is how, using the words we, together, Talking about, I know the company values pay equity. What I love about saying that, even if you're not sure, okay, it holds them accountable to that standard. Engaging them, right, enlisting them as that collaborator and guide, right, curious to hear your thoughts, okay? They're going to feel kind of honored that you're seeking their guidance, even if you don't really care, right? And so this was my example before of kind of shifting the balance from sometimes it's personal to them, right? If you were in my position, what would you do? But also enlisting them as your kind of co-conspirator and getting the company to give everybody more money. And just really remember this same thing, not just for salary negotiation, but when you're interviewing for a job. When you walk in, they are praying that this will work. Okay. It is to their benefit for you to say yes. All right. Everybody's on the same side. This should make you feel better. Same thing, by the way, for really any high stakes, high pressure situation. Like if you're walking in and making a presentation, they want you to succeed, right? Like people are rooting for you. It's better for them if you do well. Assumption number 3, you feel like you haven't earned it. All right. I hear this a lot actually from women who say, well, I just did my job. Like, does that merit a raise? This is my response. Would a mediocre white man think that way? Okay. All right. First of all, do you know how your paycheck is determined? And then do you also know the impact that you've had on the business? So this is not just about like, quote, doing your work. It's about how much money have you made for the company? Okay. The impact of your work. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, here, like I said, paycheck is determined by scope of responsibilities as listed in your original job description, plus, and I want to underscore this, current value in the market. This is why you should never base your next salary on what you used to make. I'm going to repeat that again. Never base your next salary on what you used to make. Why? You may have been underpaid. Plus, the market was different. Plus, you're different. Think about how much you've grown since then. So, this is what I think you need to follow here. Original job description, writing a new one based on what you've done. Okay, impact on business bottom line. We'll go into more detail in another slide. And I want to talk to you about current value in the market. It's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. What are competitor companies willing to pay you? So, wherever you are negotiating, okay, if it's for a startup, you need to be doing your market research, comparing it to other startups in its space, just simply looking up who are their competitors and finding out how much they're paying. Also, remember, I said you feel like you haven't earned it. All right, feelings, they're valid, but they are not factual. You may feel like you are not good at negotiating, but let me tell you, that's an opinion you have. So keep that in mind. Replace the word feel, okay, with, or I'm not good at negotiating, with I feel like I'm not good at negotiating, which means you can learn. All right. You got to prove, you got to make the case. So even if you don't believe the case, I mean, we hope that you do. It's really the case that you make, and I'll show you how to do that. But don't assume that your work speaks for itself. This is another deadly assumption that I hear from a lot of people. As somebody once said to me, because I did this class for our community, and they wrote in a bunch of questions and the things that were holding them back. And some person said, I want my employer to start the conversation. If I really deserved a raise, they would give me one. No, they want to save money. That is their priority, is saving money, not looking out for you. So it's extremely dangerous to just assume anything, never assume anything, but B, that your work speaks for itself. We got to play the game. The game is the game of capitalism, and it's doing your work as best as you can, but also being able to articulate your work, being able to establish allies and advocates who can, speak on your behalf. And also, chances are they may even be undervaluing what you do. There's a thing called, occupational segregation, okay, where a lot of times women are in roles that are simply undervalued. Like HR, for example, really important for a company. Marketing, oftentimes the first budgets to be slashed during an economic downturn. So it really is up to you to build the case for how the work you do impacts the business bottom line. Don't assume they know it. So here are the things that you need to articulate. What's compelling to the company? Money made and money saved. So if you're right now thinking to yourself, I don't know how I've made money for the company, trust me, you have. Otherwise, you would no longer be employed there. So it is up to you to figure out how what you do then at least impacts another team, okay, that then brings in the money. But you might also want to think of it in terms of time saved, or excuse me, money saved, which is time saved. You also need to speak in their language. Spoken in their language, great. I always like to make an error somewhere on my slides to practice my perfectionism, my recovering perfectionism. You need to quantify it. Okay. You're going to bring stories, right? It's that qualitative evidence of your work, but you have to have numbers in some degree, whether it's percentages or actual, specific numbers. Plus, testimonials. Listen, if you've gotten a nice email from somebody, a client, a customer, a vendor, even a mentor within the company, mention some that they said this about you. And also demonstrating how investing in you is an investment in the company, actually. So, not just the work you've done in the past, but what are you going to be doing moving forward? Ideas that you have. And then, how do those ideas bring in money for the company? And by the way, again, bringing in money could also be saving time. They're going to be thrilled. This isn't self promotion, this is service promotion. Your wins equals the company wins. Your growth equals the company's growth, right? Your advocacy equals company advocacy. I even had a friend of mine actually once came to me and said, Claire, you'll never believe this. I was doing interviews for my company. And this one woman, she was such an amazing negotiator. I found out later that, she was part of your community. But as she was negotiating on her behalf, I was thinking to myself, wow, she's going to be such a great negotiator on behalf of the company. And it's not like she was interviewing for a role that required negotiation, actually. She wasn't like a lawyer. But advocacy is part of what you do as your job, and you may not even realize it. You have to advocate for your team, you have to advocate for your ideas. If you are negotiating with the vendors, right, outside, or having any kind of outside contact, you're speaking on behalf of the company. So, this is where I'm talking about you looking good, you looking professional, thoughtful, well prepared, etc., and passionate, by the way. Next assumption, let me know if you've been guilty about this. Doing research on Glassdoor is fine or is enough. No. If they ask you or if you tell them that that's where you did your research, they will say to you, it's not relevant. Now, here's the thing that I absolutely cannot stand, but it is the truth. Companies have access to data that we do not. Okay. They oftentimes, depends how small or large the company is, but they'll subscribe to these databases. One is called Aon, Mercer, Radford, databases that are aggregates of salary data, right? With a special login, and they pay for it. You or we, as the employees, we don't have access to that. So now there's this asynchronous information or the asymmetry to information. Crap. So we might bring in a number that they say is not relevant. This is why we have to bring a diversity of sources. So I really challenge you. Real people, guys, you got to talk to real people. And white men, let's talk to the people who are making the most. Okay. Competitor companies, who works there, who does something very similar to you, right? Who has maybe a similar background, because context is very important. Then you can talk about, hey, I had a discussion with 8 people in similar companies. When you have the strong case will be because you have strong research. There's no need to even feel confident. It's just math here, right? But if you're coming in with, I only did research in one place, or it's just Glassdoor, it's too easy for them to say, no, that's not relevant. And then the conversation's over. By the way, if you were hearing me going, well, that all sounds fine, Claire, but gosh, I can't even imagine what I would say to ask somebody their salary. Ballpark, bring research to them. This is what I found. Am I off base? Tie it to the higher purpose. Men really want to be allies, or at least some of them do, right? This is a great way for them to be supportive by sharing the ballpark of what they make. Plus, it's to everybody's benefit, right? This is where we are all collectively saying together, do not let employers underpay us. And by making sure we're not underbidding each other, this especially is important for my freelancing friends here. Why would you want to be the cheapest option? It's a race to the bottom. It's worse for you. It's worse for me. It's worse for everybody. So collectively, let's all decide that we are going to stick to a standard of pay here. That's my rant. Cheers. No, we're now on assumption number 5. We got a couple more to go. Hope this is resonating with you all. Knowing a ballpark salary is enough. No, it is not. So, that's where you start with your research, getting somebody to feel comfortable. Okay. But you need to come in with exact numbers and a few of them. Because again, I don't want this conversation to be over because you said, I'd like this. They say no, we're done. No, I recommend 3. Within that research you did, you're going to see a range in the pay band. Okay. Pick 3 numbers. I encourage you to pick now lowest, medium, and highest. But that's not necessarily lowest, medium, and highest within the range. It has to be specific and personal to your goals, because maybe for you, your highest Yeah, let's like make it the highest of the pay band, but maybe your lowest is not the lowest of the pay band because that's too low for you, right? You got higher goals here. So just spend a lot of time reflecting on, your budget, not what you're willing to sacrifice. I mean, I want you to explore that, but truly think big here. What do you aspire to make? Why not make that your goal? And in my class that I teach that's longer, we go into a lot more detail about determining your bottom line. I think when we're in desperate mode or people pleasing mode, we're way too quick to just say yes to the bottom line. I really need us to put a lot of thought into like, seriously, what are we willing to financially sacrifice? And is this opportunity worth it? So part of that, I'm just going to spend a little time here because I am very passionate about this. Money is not everything. Okay. So what are all the things that you find valuable in your life, not just in your career? So the lifestyle that you want to have, maybe it's working from home or autonomous hours. Maybe it's getting them to pay for you to go to some executive coaching or MBA. Maybe it's the mentorship, the skills you're pivoting, and perhaps all of those things are worth taking a lower paycheck. Right. But I want you to do that thinking before you are in the situation where you have to defend what you want. Okay. So that's why salary negotiation, preparing for it, to me, it's something to be done, all throughout the year, building your case, reflecting on your budget, on your goals, advocating for yourself. Waiting until it's time for the actual negotiation, it's just adding way too much pressure on yourself. And I don't want you to be operating from a place of pressure. Okay. Assumption number 6, you should ask for what's reasonable. What's reasonable? That's very culturally specific. Okay. Again, that to like women should be accommodating. Why would you not ask for just the highest number you found in your research, right? Let them tell you no. But you're going to back it up. You're going to say, this is the number I'm asking for. It's just in the research, right? And I believe I've made the case for how what I do, brings dollars to this company. So what do you think? And then you're going to have to be prepared for them to say no, right? And you're going to have whatever your response will be, map the whole thing out. But this is where I think a lot of us would rather say no to ourselves than let someone else say no to us. Somehow that feels less painful. I think that's, playing it small. We got to be brave. And also, let's not trust that we are thinking big enough for ourselves. Listen, I consider myself a pretty confident person. Okay. I wouldn't have been able to create everything that I have. I've also only realized in literally the last week through some like deep ass therapy work that I'm playing it small. We are way too close to ourselves. We don't have the perspective that we need. This is why I'm an advocate for working with a coach. I'm taking on a couple of new clients. So reach out if you feel like we could be a good fit. But really, just trust me, you are thinking too small, even if you don't think you are. There's more you can ask for. And so please let this be a signal to you that you've got to explore effectively your relationship with yourself. Okay. And then where does work and money fit into that? And then own it. And this is a case in point for what I mean here. A member wrote me, I'm a first generation student and most of my family barely made minimum wage. When I start hearing, she's a lawyer, when I start hearing about a lawyer's salary, I get nervous because I have no knowledge of what I deserve. It's very difficult to ask for $1,000 a week when my mother does not even make that in a month, right? What I deserve, what I'm worth. I mean, these are existential, therapeutic questions to ask ourselves. It's going to take a lifelong journey of like deeply, deeply believing in and owning our worth. And money is just one manifestation. Our salary is just one manifestation of it. So I don't say all this to make you feel like, oh crap, God, I have so much more work to do. It's just reminder that whatever number you want, aim higher. This is the number one, not number one, but a big assumption and a big question I always get, which is you should never say your number first. Okay. First, I want to acknowledge that I think I should never say my number first. It's rooted in fear, the fear, and these are legit fears potentially. You might go too low, right? You might leave money on the table. You might undersell yourself. Or the flip side, you might go too high and lose the opportunity. Okay. My answer to you is it's context dependent. So I give different advice depending on where you are at in the negotiation process. So this is for somebody who obviously is interviewing at a new job. All right, you don't have the offer yet. So let's say you're filling out an application of like ideal salary. I want you to put the lowest number in the market research you did. I know that sounds very anti ladies get paid, but hear me out. Um, at that point in the process of doing an online application, you are simply trying to get past the applicant tracking system. We're trying to get past the first round, okay, to get the interview. You want to get in the door, dazzle them, and then you negotiate once you have the offer. If a recruiter asks you how much you want to make, don't tie yourself to the number. Just say, here's the general research that I did, but also know for yourself your bottom line and do share that with them. Okay. So you're not saying any specific number. By the way, with that online application, if you put the lowest number in the market research and then you get the offer and you want to negotiate more, they're not going to pull up your online application and say you put the lowest number in the research. Okay. Just want to be clear about that. So you are showing research at this point, not tying yourself to an actual number. However, I have different advice for if you get the offer and this is when you say the number you want. hmm You do. You come out and you say, I did my research. I am asking for this number because I believe I am a top performer. Here's a quote. I'm hesitant to lose the opportunity on the off chance I quote something too high. The research I did was around, and then say the highest number. Okay. Is that close to what the company budgeted? That's where you're now eliciting more information from them that you can then filter and sort of, recite back to them in your case. Um, I found in my research that a top performer makes approximately, again, highest number of your research. And since I've proven myself to be one, I'd expect something close, especially since, and this is holding them accountable to this standard, I know this is a company that values pay equity and invests in their employees. The reason I like to say a high number and be the one to actually say it first so it's called anchoring high, and there's research that demonstrates psychological benefit to you and them. Now the negotiation is centered around this high number and you are in command. Versus if it's their number and it's a low number, you're now in a defense mode, right? You might feel kind of surprised or bummed. Actually, by the way, there should never be any surprise in this. Please note from the very beginning, at least the ballpark of what it is that you expect to be paid here, so you don't waste your time or their time in going through this process. I'm going to take a sip of water. Assumption number 8, resistance means it's going badly. So you're in the negotiation process and they're saying no, or I don't know if I can do that, or we've got budget cuts, and you're starting to lose your nerve here. They're just doing their job. Okay. It's their job to get you to say yes for the least amount of money possible. If they're not a great company, if they're an excellent progressive company, what they're going to do is what they should do is pay you top dollar, because that means you're going to be really happy and stay with them longer. And that's a long-term investment, right? Versus if they're paying you bottom dollar, you're probably going to leave after a year. And that kind of high churn is, to me, not good for a company, but that's just my opinion. So if you're getting any kind of resistance, do pay attention to it, right? How it's going back and forth. Like that's a preview to the relationship in general at that company, but don't assume anything. I think I've said that before throughout today, right? Assumptions, you're not a mind reader, right? Not a fortune teller. Just know the numbers that you wanted, right? Remember, we're going to have 3 numbers. So if you're not getting the first number, you're going to ask for the next number plus some questions to get clarity on how they determined comp. And so a lot of the preparation for salary negotiation, it's not just here's what I'm going to say, but it's how are you going to transition from hearing something, resistance on their part, how will you then respond to that? So I like to think of it as this framework of like you anchor high, they have a response, you have a collaborative response to them. So a number, maybe some full compensation. They then respond, okay, now we're going to prepare with the comeback, all right, and another suggestion for what might work. They're going to respond. And then it's going to end with like an exchange of some kind. I go into more detail in my video course and what I mean by these things and scripts. And I'll give you all a code for that. But again, I think too often the only times that we prepare for salary negotiation is like our opening remarks, if that, and not for, all right, if they say this, then what will I say? And mapping out all potential scenarios that you might get. We want to eliminate any element of surprise here. That's going to make you feel a lot more confident going into this if you've really determined, not decided, but like imagined all the possible ways it could go and how you would then transition, your response. And I think it's about persistence. There's a debate whether or not women negotiate as much as men. The narrative used to be that we didn't, and that's why we were getting paid less. That's BS. There's recent research that says that we absolutely are negotiating as much as men. We just aren't getting the yeses as much as men. I think that's in part, I think that's twofold. Just very quickly on this front, I think that men also might be getting a no, but then they ask again or they continue the conversation, right? To my point earlier here of like, you need to have all these different kind of responses to them and how they, respond to you. Whereas I think we ask, we are told no, and then we say, okay, never mind, right? So there's a persistence element here. Again, you got to thread the needle carefully in how you do it because of that freaking double bind, right? The other reason I think is because oftentimes women are not in roles that are so obviously connected to the business bottom line. I'd mentioned occupational segregation before. So if you're interested to learn more about that, you can Google it. I find it very, it's fascinating, actually. It's very depressing, but it's fascinating. All right, let's talk about this assumption that whatever's the final number is the end of the negotiation. I would look at it as the end of the money part of the conversation. Now we're going to talk about benefits that go beyond the bottom, beyond the dollar. So full compensation, prepare that before you go in. So don't just go off of what they're giving you. I mean, start with seeing how much, what are all other benefits of, vacation days or sending you to a conference or whatever it is. Okay. Let them tell you, because if you ask for it, that and they were already planning on giving it to you, there's no leverage. So let them tell you all the things they're going to give you beyond money. But I also want you to have prepared what brings you value, right? And whatever you want that they did not mention, then you ask for it here. You also have to really understand, how are you going to grow? So this is where we shift the conversation from just how is my paycheck going to grow, but how am I growing my skills, responsibilities, high value, high impact. So interaction with clients or mentorship, right? Be proactive in this. It's not their job to see you succeed. I mean, it should be that's would be ideal, but they're thinking about themselves. They're busy, so if you need to have a sense of like where you want to be focusing your energies so that you can be growing. But again, showing how your growth benefits them. Be specific too. I think I kind of just said my piece here, but anything that you want to ask for, already be thinking about how do you show how it's a benefit to them. So if it's sending you to a conference or getting, a coach, hiring me to be your coach, you got to show them why it's going to be actually good for them, how it's going to impact your team, your quality of work. Maybe you're going to meet clients if you go to this conference, etc. So be as creative. This is where the creative problem solving aspect comes in. Negotiating is just about your paycheck. No, this is the opportunity. I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. Really look at this not as a conversation around money, but a conversation around the value you bring to the table. They should be leveraging your value so that they get more out of you. So you come in and you know your signature strengths and you hammer those home. This is about career momentum. Again, it's not mutually exclusive with them. Your momentum is their momentum. And this is where, it's all throughout the year. So I have a whole methodology. I call it the PAID method. And it's proactive advocacy of impact. Don't even remember my D at this point. Oh, yeah. And data advocacy through impact and data. Like I said, I just had 2 babies. So this is where all throughout the year, be aligning your work with what they recognize and reward. Seriously, a lot of men know how to play this game. It's called office politics. Unfortunately, we got to be part of that. Otherwise, we are going to miss out. You can do it in a way that is authentic to you. And I talk about that more at length during, my class, my longer class, and advocating for yourself consistently. So I want you to walk away from today thinking to yourself, all right, what are small ways that I can be demonstrating my work? So again, not assuming it speaks for itself, but that I am speaking for it. So an email at the end of the week of, your manager of like, the top highlights of the week kind of thing. It's better for them to know this because their team success makes them look good. Make sure that, people at the company, not just your direct boss, but other people know about it. People who are, of influence in rooms that you are not invited into. That's a lot of times when raises and promotions are decided. It has nothing to do with the annual promotion. It's in passing conversations that other people are having about, who's doing really well. And then we've got 2 more assumptions, and then I'll jump into questions. I think we're trekking right along. If you didn't get the money, it must be your fault. No, 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 no. This is really important and very hard to do. Your net worth does not equal your self-worth. You're doing the best that you can, but this is not in your control. There are way too many variables here, right? Like you could absolutely have made the best case possible, 1000% deserve it, and the company simply cannot afford it. And that is just true. Okay. So that's why we really have to focus only on the things that we have within, I'm going to say command, not control. Um, and what do we have in command? And I think that's, did we feel good about how we presented ourselves? By the way, that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. I hope there is. I hope something doesn't go well so that you can continue to improve, because that's growth. If you did everything perfectly, you would be static in your life. So I want you to chart your progress based off not did you get the number or not, but what was your process like and how you put this together? And then how can you improve that moving forward? And if you're listening to me going, well, Claire, you seem pretty outgoing and, owning your worth. Is that innate? In some ways, yes, but in many ways, not. It is practicing. It is practicing and it is stumbling. It is messing up. Okay. My first negotiation, I did it by accident. Okay. I didn't respond to an email. I missed it. It went into my spam folder. And then they emailed me again with a higher offer. And it was because they assumed my lack of response was a negotiating tactic, which, by the way, it technically is. Silence is good. Silence is hard. So you got to practice it. It was by accident. I just didn't see their email and then they paid me more. No, it's a learned skill. One thing to remind yourself is you've actually been negotiating for years. Listen, I already see it with my little babies already, right? Like the way that they want food and the crying that they do. And now they're learning to smile. And I think they're learning to smile for food. That's a negotiation. So really thinking of yourself, we put salary negotiation on a pedestal because it's very fraught, right? We associate often our identity with our work, right? That self-worth and net worth. We see it as a reflection, right? The yes or no is a reflection of how good we are at our job. We're afraid to rock the boat, etc. So asking for more is scary. We also have, some of us, at least me, the complicated relationship with money in general. So there's a lot of burden and baggage to negotiating your salary. But if you can take the salary component out of it and really look at it as this is a negotiation and I've been doing it for years in many ways, that should hopefully bolster your confidence. Also, you need support in this. You need to, it's a learned skill. You don't know what you don't know. So come on, join us, ladiesgetpaid.com. I would love to connect with you. Like I mentioned, I have this other class. It's 5.5 hours of videos, ladiesgetpaid.com/get paid. And we've got a code here for you all. Muse 20, $100 off. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, I would love to connect with you. I can send you these slides. So please, come on over to my LinkedIn. That's the best way to connect with me. I also put the email here, but LinkedIn, I will see that quicker, I think. And Claire gets paid on Instagram. I'm going to just acknowledge some questions here in the last 4 minutes that we have. So the last thing here is just, this has been helpful for me. And anytime I get nervous doing something, but especially in a salary negotiation, just look at it as practice for the future. Okay. There's going to be something else that you really want later on that has even higher stakes. And get this goes beyond salary negotiation. It's also life in general, whether you're interviewing or giving a presentation like I am. This is practice. Everything is practice. So, however, the experience is for you in the moment, right? It's just fodder for you to do it again in the future. And there's no way you're not going to improve, right? So just like take solace and you're going to do well, but you're going to have areas to continue to work on. And that's actually the goal ultimately. So get in touch with me here. Let me check the questions. I have them in a private chat. I know we've got about 3 minutes left. So I'm going to start with questions that were asked, the latest question. So how much flexibility do companies have to offer more vacation days? Totally context dependent. I can't tell you that. You simply have to ask. Do you ever suggest anchoring with a range and let that lower number be a higher number than what you'd be comfortable with? Totally. I'll let you in on a little secret I have. When people ask me how much I cost, I tell them a number that I have rarely gotten from people. I sometimes do get people to say yeses, but I'll say, hey, I'm usually this much, or this is the amount that I would charge. However, I really want to work with you. So what do you have budgeted? So it's a way of anchoring, but not, but also softening it. So that's that threading of the needle, that double bind. So yes, always say the highest number you want, but you can say it is like within a range or approximate. They've already posted the salary range in the job description. Can you still negotiate beyond that raise? I answered that question. So check on back on the slides. How do you approach negotiating a salary at a nonprofit where money is scarce to begin with? Just know that there's already going to be that added layer of guilt of more for you means less for them. We need to put that aside. The goal for them really should be getting you to work there long term and do your best work. The only way you can do that is if you are paid appropriately. So, good nonprofit should be paying competitive salaries. However, it is based on the market. So when you're doing your research, you're obviously not going to do research with like a Facebook comparing that to a nonprofit salary. You're looking at quote competitor nonprofits and you're asking for the highest amount within that range. But something you may have to do above and beyond, and I know this firsthand because I have worked at multiple nonprofits and my mother's run nonprofits, you may have to have ideas for how the company can make more money. That's oftentimes really the only way to bump your own salary is if you are working on things like, development, right? Fundraising, etc. What are ways to quote prove that 20% increase in responsibilities? Again, go back to that original job description. The scale of your work, the scope of your work. Did somebody, go on leave and you took their responsibilities over, right? Like how similar does your job today look to the way it did when you first started? It might not be this actual 20%. You might not be able to like calculate it to that percentage, but if it seems like, we're getting kind of close, like you've done a lot of things that are not with what you were assigned to do to start with. Let's assume it's been 20, not to assume. I know that was the word I didn't want us to. We'd never assume anything, but don't put pressure on yourself to think it has to be this like exact 20%. It's pretty general. All right. Those are the questions. And we are at time. And my cat, perfect. Right. There we go. So Phoebe says, go get paid. Would love to keep in touch. See you on LinkedIn, hopefully. Go ahead, like I said, screenshot whatever you want. And I'm excited to be in your corner to get paid more because, like I mentioned, more for you is better for all of us.
Thank you so much, Claire. We have a few folks who are interested in popping that discount code back on the slide. If you wouldn't mind clicking back. Muse20 is the discount code.
And it's ladiesgetpaid.com/getpaid.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we drop all of those links in the chat. Thank you, Claire, for spending so much time with us. Your session was jam-packed with actionable takeaways, amazing insights, and also complimentary resources. But for those who want more time with Claire, we highly recommend that salary negotiation course that she referenced. You have a discount code. We'll drop the link to register in the chat. Thank you again for all of the time and all of your support and being a part of our community. Next up, we have a session titled Interviewing 101, Expert Advice that will help you get your next job. So please don't go away. We'll be taking just a short break, but we'll be back on stage in just a few.